Everything happened to me. I never miss a thing. I've had the measles and the mumps, and every
Hello, hello, everybody.
my
So, hello. I know you.
I guess I'm
Um,
just a fool.
well, I hope the coffee was good,
Looks before
because then we're gonna have some dense discussion here in this next session. If we can, please, the projection people, can you put the slide with the QR code? Excellent. So as it is sort of a trend in EUT Plus, we do a lot of surveys like this, right? These are fun, but they're really informative as well. So take your phones out or take your laptops out. I hope that you have internet connection. Roque, did you manage to log in? Excellent. Okay. So please go in, and we're gonna start a what's supposed to be a fun survey. The intention of this survey is to compare these to bigger results. So we're going to see what the room looks like when we compare it to the whole EU. And then after that, we're going to start our general seminar with Enrico Bali, who's here with us. And then we're going to have a good discussion, I hope. So for the people arriving, please grab a seat, take a QR code. This is important.
happens to me.
Oh, first time in my life that someone tells me that I'm tall. Thank you, Shannon. That's a lovely compliment. I try, these are high platforms. All right, let's give it like 30 more seconds and we start on these. If we can cut up the music, please, that would be great. Thank you. My music is great. I'm not complaining. We're just starting the new session. Okay. Well, people can join in. You'll have the QR code. You'll have the code there. So, first one of the questions. This is a serious question. Who should take responsibility to ensure that new technologies benefit everyone? Should it be the government? Should it be up to the people themselves? Or you just don't know? Almost there. We're more than half of the people there. For the people online as well, please, scan the QR code, put the code. You can participate. Then I'll be hosting the chat online, so please, just as a FYI, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and then I'll take that. Okay, people, eight more people. Come on. 46 of 55. Well, 56, 55. All right. I guess we'll leave it there. Good. Let's go. Second question. It's only 4 questions. Results of publicly funded research should be made available online free of charge. Do you agree? You don't agree? And all the things in between. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next. trust in scientific research and discoveries created with the help of AI? Do you trust? You don't trust. Have in mind, with the help of AI. Oh, this is moving nicely. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next. Final question. How do you engage with science and technology issues? I mean, this is biased because we're here, we already are kind of engaged on this, but just to have like the feeling in the room. So you have 10 options, you can put multiple answers, from watch documentaries to lend your computers processing power to contribute to science. And I know some of the questions there, they don't show up entirely, but you get the feeling. All right. Keep voting, keep voting. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next question, which is the easiest one of the questions. How do you evaluate your knowledge in citizen science? Are you a Chuck Norris of science? Are you a Bob the Builder? Or are you a Mr. Bean? This is entirely subjective. The whole thing is anonymous, so don't be afraid. We're not judging here. Okay, it's still moving, it's still moving. So I did all of this just to show you a couple. So I'm going to show you exactly the results that were coming out from the Eurobarometer survey that they made in 2025 and one in 2024 regarding the questions that we just looked. This is this is the responses from Europe in general. Then it might be too small for the countries and the whole thing, but here you make just kind of a picture of what's happening with society, who should take responsibility to ensure that new technologies benefit everybody. People, most of the people in most of the countries, they say it should be public. So government should be taking care of that. Results of publicly funded research should be made available online free of charge. Here we have more variations on the responses, but we have, at least from the kind of more dark, well, the green, let's put it that way, is people that agree, strongly agree, or tend to agree. So we see that the trend is really out there. Third one, trust in scientific research and discoveries created with the help of AI. You see that there is just a little bit at the bottom on the darker side of people fully trusting help of AI to produce research. Then you have in the middle, that's where most of the people are. And then the last one is about how people engage with science and technology issues. Here you see you have documentaries, science, talking about that with friends, science museums, and all of those things. All of these is just to show you, and this presentation will be shared with you, what is the level of engagement with society, like between society and research. So with all of that, thanks for your responses. I'm going to now give the floor to Enrico, please. And I think we can change the thing here. and here, and then you are good. Do you prefer the mic or that mic?
Wait, I will use this one.
Excellent. Well, please welcome Enrico. Thank you very much, Enrico, for being here. I'll let you present yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, good morning, and thank you for inviting me in Torah. I'm very excited to be here with you this morning. And, well, let me introduce myself. My name is Enrico Balli, and I'm currently Senior Project Consultant at the European Citizen Science Association, EXA. We call it EXA. And what is EXA? EXA is a membership-based association. Our headquarters is actually in Berlin. And why we have this nice association? Because our aim is to increase the level of democratization of science in Europe, and not only in Europe, obviously. And how do we do that? Including in our organization people, individuals, and universities and research organizations in order to create an inclusive group of people reflecting and working on participation in research. So, EXA was actually born some 12 years ago, formally, from a small group of practitioners, not only practitioners, because there were also some scholars specialized in participation in research, in what we still call in Europe citizen science. And since then, it has grown into quite a large group of people and organizations working with citizen science, advocating citizen science, but also lobbying for citizen science, for the participation of people to research at the European level. And this is our vision, to empower people to make positive changes in our society through science, and this is our mission, to open research and science, to open and to make it accessible and valuable for everybody. So, this is a picture from our last conference that ended some 10 days ago, 1 week ago, I do not even remember. The conference was in Oulu, Finland. And so far, it has been the largest citizen science conference in Europe. Last week, we hosted more than 650 people at the University of Oulu. And this is the team. This is the Berlin team that, among the other activities, has organized the conference in Oulu. So, let's give some context to my presentation, because the presentation that I'm giving today wouldn't have been the same a few months ago, a couple of years ago, even a few weeks ago, I would say. So, this is Europe, and this is Europe as it was when I moved to Berlin, when I joined the EXA headquarters at the end of 2021. I'm part of EXA since the beginning of the association, and I held many different positions at EXA. In 2021, I moved to Berlin and I started to work with my colleagues at the headquarters of the association that I also had the honor and the privilege to chair for a few years, from 2021 to 2024. Since then, actually a few months after I moved to Berlin, Europe has actually changed and many different things have happened. And as you can see, Europe is not the same nice and peaceful part of the world as it used to be before. This is the situation today. Maybe I've missed some recent bombings of the last couple of days, but this is the global geopolitical situation around Europe today. This is the first part of the context of my presentation. The second one, that is strictly linked to what we do for a living, research, science, technology. This is the cover of Science, the journal Science, the last issue of 2025. Science has nominated as the breakthrough of 2025 the big change that happened last year. Actually, last year something extremely interesting has happened because for the first time the production of energy through renewable sources was much larger than the usual fossil sources, especially the production through solar energy. But this is obviously very positive, but we have to see that, as a matter of fact, at a global level, 80% of the solar cells are actually produced in China. 70% of the turbines are produced in China, and 70% as well of the lithium batteries that are used to accumulate this energy are also produced in China. Large numbers, we could say that China has basically a monopoly, almost a monopoly, in this kind of technology. In the same issue of the journal, the runner-up, there was a list, obviously, of the science breakthrough of 2025, was obviously artificial intelligence. AI has a strong impact, as we have also seen in the survey that Santiago has shown us, in the production of science. AI is actually doing science. And this is really something that is going to change not only science and technology, but obviously our societies. And there is a big but also here, because who is actually doing these large language models that everybody is using to produce science today? OpenAI, Anthropic, Google. And who's actually producing the CPUs and GPUs that are used not only to train, but also to exploit these large language models? NVIDIA, Intel, AMD. And who's actually producing the machines that are running AI, that are training AI? Supermicro, that is definitely the leader in this field, and Dell and Hewlett-Packard. And who's actually producing and running the infrastructure on which LLMs are based and that we used on a daily basis to work not only with AI, but let's say we are focusing on this technology. Amazon, Amazon and Microsoft and Google. All these companies are from the United States. So these two technologies that have been considered the most important emerging technologies last year are basically controlled by two different countries, China on one hand and the United States of America on the other hand. Where is Europe? Well, is not really an important player in these two fields. Now, what is important to note is that in the last couple of years, there is a narrative on newspapers, on media. I mean, everybody is talking about the decline of Europe. But is it really Europe representing a decline of our society? Well, yes and no. It is true that Europe, as a matter of fact, is quite old. The average age in Europe, in the European Union, is definitely higher than in any other part of the world. We are the eldest part of the world, and this is a fact. But, on the other hand, Europe is still probably the best place to live. This is not a fact, because this is based on the perception of the European citizens about the quality of life. The European citizens are represented with the blue bars against citizens of other parts of the world. And it looks like we are still happy with our way of life compared to many other people in different parts of the world. This is a fact, actually. These are two different facts. So this is not our perception. This is a matter of fact. A child born in Europe has a life expectancy longer than in any other part of the world. And what it is interesting is to note that this is this is combined with the fact that in Europe we spend less money for our health than in any other part of the world. And this is extremely interesting. And this brings us to what is important in Europe, the wellness of our people, the wellness of us as citizens. And this is one of the most important values in the European Union, in Europe, generally speaking. And this is a fact. This is not an opinion. This is not a perception. Then, this is another fact. In the last 20 years, since 2004 to 2024, these are the last data available from 2025 from the University of Göteborg, the level of democracy at the global level has definitely decreased. And it is not decreased of a little bit. I mean, look at the pie charts. It's quite impressive, in my opinion. And this has happened during the life of what we call today the Generation Z. That means that quite a large number of people, quite a large number of young citizens, of the citizens of the future, have spent their life in a world where democracy is actually declining at the global level. And you guess this 28%, the blue part of the second chart, this 28% of democratic societies are based in Europe. Europe is still the home of democracy compared to the rest of the world. And this is extremely important, especially in a world that is rapidly changing, as we have seen in the first slides. And Europe should, in my opinion, still think to what are our most important values. Democracy. What is democracy? Democracy is participation. Democracy in Europe is based on diversity, is based on inclusion, is based on equity. And this obviously has an impact also on our work, on research, on technology. And in this field, Europe definitely does not lack talent, does not lack ideas, does not lack research. Europe has a huge amount of research, of top-level research, top-quality research. What Europe doesn't have compared to other parts of the world, as you can see in the second graph, is the scale of research in some fields. And when I talk about research, after talking about democracy, I'm also talking about democracy in science. That is actually what we do at EXA, the European Citizen Science Association. You have seen our mission that is actually to democratize research in science and technology. What does it mean? Obviously, it doesn't mean to vote on facts. This is a topic that is quite often raised by opponents of democratization of science for obvious reasons. But what is democratizing science about? It means first to be transparent about our values, the values of our research. And second, also to be completely humble about the fact that our methods, that our research have limits. Research is powerful, and I mean, we can provide as many examples as we like about the power of research today, but obviously research has also limits, and we have to acknowledge this fact. And it's about opening research. And opening means that we should work together with the people that are not professionals in science, but we shouldn't forget that especially in Europe, all these people are the shareholders, are the main shareholders of our research, because luckily in Europe, most of the research in science and technology is funded by the public, is funded by our taxes. And therefore, we have the responsibility, thank you so much. Thank you. We have the responsibility of acknowledge that our salaries, our labs, all the money for almost all the money for our research comes from the public, comes from the people, comes from the citizens. And which are the values of democracy when applied to science? Well, one of the most important values is what what we call cognitive justice. That means basically to recognize that people that are not professional researchers do have knowledge, do have data, do have insights about science and research. I just give you two examples in the field of biodiversity or in the field of air quality, but of course we can have a very long list of fields in which these apply. And we should recognize the value of this knowledge, the value of the knowledge of non-professional researchers. Just a short example from my personal experience. Last year, I concluded an EU-funded research project that was a 3 years long project in which we had different applications of the participation of people. And one that was extremely important for the results of this research, that was research about biodiversity, came from different groups of hunters. Hunters, you know, people that basically do not have a clue about research because they do something completely different, but they have a very deep knowledge about animals and plants and season and everything. And without the help of these people that are obviously distributed in the field, I mean, in all the countries in which we carry this research, we could exactly know where to measure the activity of animals, for instance, placing in the right positions the photo traps, for instance. You know, this knowledge that is not usually considered scientific knowledge has proved to be extremely important for the results of our research project. This is, I mean, a small example, but it's from my personal experience. And you have to think that when I was presented with this project, I mean, I'm definitely against hunting. I'm vegetarian. I have a big respect for animals. Oh my God, I couldn't work with these people. They are killing animals, so they're bad people in principle. But then at the end, really working together and trying to understand each other was one of the keys of the success of our research. End of the personal story. Then, the second important value, in my opinion, is the social robustness of research that involves the public. For instance, we know that in the last few years, quite a large number of European citizens were bloody against the Green Deal, the so-called Green Deal. And actually, the Commission had to step back from some of the goals that were supposed to happen in 2035, just because the people were not in favor of these changes. And I mean, one of the reasons because the people were not in favor is also the fact that people was actually misinformed. That there was a perception about the Green Deal that is definitely different from the reality of research, from the reality of the needs of Europe, of the needs of our countries. And what I think it is important that people really, really know why the things are important, not just because they are informed by kind of authority, but because they are part of all this. They are part of the research in the field of what we call the Green Deal, the green economy, the big change towards, for instance, a different production of energy. But as a matter of fact, people is not involved, and therefore people can be really misinformed, and this is what's happening. The same could happen or is happening in the field of AI. Most of the people actually do not have a clue about research in the field, in the different fields of AI today. And this is a danger because, as we've seen, AI is dramatically changing the world in which we live. It's dramatically changing our societies, not only research. So, two examples of very good reasons because the people should be part of this. And then we also have to recognize that the diversity in terms of epistemic, in terms of knowledge, is also important because otherwise the risk of talking with each other in small groups and therefore not to be open to understand the implication, the impact of our research, of the progresses of our research, especially in some fields, with the society, could dramatically limit our research itself. For instance, in terms of funding. We know that what we call the Horizon Europe, that is the current framework program for research and innovation of the European Union, will end next year, and a new program, a new framework program will start. We don't know that much about the new framework program, but given the context that we've seen, we can easily imagine that some of the priorities will be completely different. And maybe even the budget will be completely different, because war in Europe also means that probably some money will be moved from research, from basic research to applied research. Some money, some budget will be moved to the production of new weapons. Who knows? Who knows? Because we don't have this information today. But what we definitely know is that the trust and the transparency in research should be increased if we want to go on in having a budget in research that can be comparable to the budget that we had in Horizon Europe, but that so far has been the largest budget in research and innovation in the European Union. And here enters the European Research Area Act. This is something that will probably change the way we will do research in the next many, many years. It is considered, and I fully agree, the most important piece of legislation in the last 25 years for what is research in Europe. The European Research Area Act is now in the final stages. It is supposed to become a law at the European level in the third quarter of this year. And it has quite a long story because it's a process that started in 2014, actually the same year of the foundation of the European Citizen Science Association, but this is obviously coincidence, with the Enrico report at the European Commission. And it is important because it is a move from a series of recommendations we should do like this, it would be better to do like this, to laws. We have to do like this. We must work in this way. And this is a big, big change because this will provide to the European countries a binding legal framework for research. What does it mean? Is it what we call the fifth freedom in Europe? In the European Union. So the fifth freedom, what we call the fifth freedom, is really the core of the European Research Area Act. What is the fifth freedom? You know that the first freedoms of the European Union are the freedom about the people, the citizens. Citizens can freely move from one country to another in Europe. Okay, I'm not going in the exact order of importance according to the Commission. This is my personal order of importance. So we have the right to move freely in the European Union. We as the citizens can freely move in the European Union. Then, of course, goods. Goods can be imported or exported freely in the European Union. Capitals. Money can freely move around in the European Union. And services. A French company can provide services in Italy, an Italian company can provide services in Spain, and so on and so forth. And this is something that is already happening, that is happening since the foundation of the European Union. But the freedom of research still does not exist formally. And this freedom is the free movement of researchers, scientific knowledge and technology across the European Union. At a practical level, the fact that the Union wants to remove all the legal and the bureaucratic walls that are preventing today data and people and talents and research moving from a lab in the Netherlands to a lab in Germany, a lab in France to a lab in Italy, whatever country in the European Union, is really a bold move. Because today this is legally not possible. We still have too many different laws in different European countries that are actually preventing this freedom of movement for both researchers and knowledge. And, as I said, this will provide the legal certainty to the free movement, because it will not be the recommendation that we have today. It will be really the law. That means that, for instance, researchers will have exactly the same rights in terms of career, in terms of salaries, in terms of positions, in all the European countries. In all the European countries, in all the 27 countries of the Union. And this is a big change, in my opinion. And this brings me to the original concept, democracy. Why? Why? This is important for citizen science and for democratizing research. It's important because if you read the draft of this European Research Area Act, the relationship with the society and the participation of the society to research will be part of this act, will be mandatory. It will not be just a series of recommendations, as we've seen in the last three framework program for research and innovation, especially in the last two, after the Responsible Research and Innovation Program of the European Union. This will be really part of the European laws, and therefore it will be a law, a series of laws in all the 27 European countries. And one of the most important goals of this act is to open science, to make all the practices about open science mandatory. And one of these practices that is the most important, in my opinion, not only because I work in citizen science, not only because I've spent the last decades of my career in participation to research, the citizen participation to research, but because this is, in my opinion, is really the pillar of democracy in science and research. This is what will become the new normal. And not only an option, something that we have to write somewhere when writing proposals, because we have to put some form of participation of citizens, some form of relationship with the society here and there in our proposals, but this will become really part of the structure of the European research. And going back to the two contexts that I've shown you at the very beginning, this is extremely important. Because I really think that we shouldn't follow the examples of what apparently are the winning models in technology and research today. Models that are not based on our core values. And if Europe will forget these core values, well, maybe this will bring some small advantages in terms of competition in the short term. But what will happen in the long term? What will happen to these young citizens, the people that are 25 years old today, the people that are just starting their research career today? What will happen to them in the next 10 years if we completely forget the roots, the values of Europe, if we forget democracy, if we forget participation and inclusion and equity? Well, I think that open science, that has obviously a lot of different aspects, not only publishing papers in open access journals, has unfortunately quite a large number of researchers still think, well, opening science will mean to be open to these new scientific citizens. And this is not just a small part of research, because this is really this will become a basic right of every citizen in Europe. Scientific freedom. Scientific freedom doesn't mean only freedom for professional researchers, but it also means the scientific freedom for everybody, for all the citizens. And we shouldn't forget that, going back to the two examples, China on one hand and the United States of America on the other hand, the kind of control of politics on research can be, as I said, effective in the short term, but I see it as a big danger in the long term. And this does not belong to our values. And as I said, scientific freedom also implies that research will be more and more transparent. To be open also means to be transparent, to show what we do and to involve the people in what we do as researchers. And these policies that will be included in the European Research Area Act at the end of this year have obviously, quite a long path because it is based on the research, the European Research Area Policy Agenda 25-27, and it has had some interesting aspects, especially for what we consider excellence. I guess that I'm pretty sure that everybody in this room had to write in the last few years the excellence chapter in some of the proposals that we all need for our research. And when we think what excellence is about, we shouldn't forget that excellent is not just a couple of pages of blah, blah, blah. Excellence should mean, in my opinion, to be strictly linked to our core values, to be strictly linked to the robustness, to the social robustness of research and to the relationship with our society, with the citizens. The European Commission just closed the consultation phase of the European Research Area Act in January this year, and this has been quite an interesting process because it has been highly participative compared to many other initiatives of the Commission. The Commission has received more than 700 contributions. It was actually 750 contributions and 117 position papers. As you can imagine, one of the position papers was the position paper of the people working on citizen science in Europe, not only, but I'm quite proud of what we have done, what we've done in this case, and almost 1/4 of the contribution came from individuals, from citizens. That means that not only organizations, not only universities, research labs are interested in this big change, but quite a large number of citizens. Because, 24% of the contributions really came from citizens. And this is something that usually doesn't happen at the level of the Commission. So, just to close my presentation, I think that we will move from a Europe where the engagement, the participation of citizens was a nice-to-have part of our projects, to a Europe in which this will be part of the structure of our research and innovation policy. And is not only asking to involve the public in research, but to have the legal mandate to create a democratic European research area, to create the participation of citizens to research at a global scale in Europe. And it is not just a moral goal. If you consider what is happening around us, what is happening in the world, and especially the fact that in the world at the global level, democracy is really decreasing. And basically, we are the only part of the world in which democracy is still the most important value, with all the consequences. Well, I think that this move is also important at a strategic level, because as a matter of fact, the competition is very high and we cannot avoid it. But competing doesn't mean to forget our core values. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Enrico. This is now time for questions. So we have plenty of time for questions, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of reflection happening in how science is produced, shared, reproduced, disseminated, all of this.
Thank you very much for your presentation, your thoughts. So I'm not a scientist. I'm in charge of entrepreneurship here at UTT. Yeah, I'm a citizen. I'm very involved in some civil societies, in different associations. So we are obviously discuss action research. That's what we are very interested in, and I would like to know your thoughts about how scientists can cooperate with civil organizations. And we are as well discussing a lot the concept of transparency. So we want to be transparent, but we arrived to the conclusion that to be transparent, of course, there are two things. First is the accessibility of the data, and even more, the accessibility of the tools to help you to understand the data. So when we are talking about open science and all the platform, they will democratize the science results. In these times of misinformation and attacks against science, couldn't the democratization of science offer a platform for these skeptics?
Well, thank you for the question. What I think is that democratizing science, opening science, the participation to science is actually not only a good way to produce better science and even to produce more science, actually, but as I said, the way to fight against the misinformation about science. I mean, a lot of facts today are not exactly known to quite a large part of the citizens, not only in Europe, but even in Europe, because there are so many different sources of misinformation. I mean, look at what is happening on the so-called social media. Look at what happened just a few years ago. 2021, there was one of the most brilliant examples of the power of research when less than 1 year after we discovered the virus of the pandemic, we were ready with vaccination. And I mean, what has happened, And we all know that this is a consequence of this misinformation. But when you open research, when you give the opportunity to everybody to look at what we are doing in our labs, then it is in my opinion, more and more difficult to provide this kind of misinformation. Then it is much, much easier to let the people understand exactly what research is about. Not only the results of research, but also the methods. Because what happened in 2021 obviously was not like, oh, magic. You know, there is a virus and then we have the vaccine. I mean, this was not the reality. But most of the people were not and are not even today aware of the process that has brought us to this big result. And in my opinion, this is very bad. So, yes, I think that this could be opening science, opening our data, opening our methods is the only way to fight against misinformation. And misinformation is not something that is produced by itself. I mean, we have the evidence about how misinformation has been brought to Europe in many different cases. Come on, it's not... we know exactly how it works. Most of the people do not. But I think that they should.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And already during the starting in the questioning that you did with us, a question occurred to my mind. If we are now making available all these research results under open access and transparent, provided transparently to society, everybody knows what is going on and what has been funded, and it's owned and accessible by everyone, that's fine. It's of course strengthening democracy because it's creating transparency and everybody can make up their own mind. On the other hand, I think this is still under the assumption that we are living in a rule-based world. So I'm asking you, just as a provocative question, what do we do if we make all our public IPR commonly available to the whole world? Yeah? So we are producing a lot of insights, maybe with the help of citizen scientists, and we are making them available on open access, not for all our fellow citizens in Europe alone, but for the whole world. And how do we protect our societal IPR from misuse? We know that all these large tech companies are investing heavily in harvesting our knowledge and simply wrapping an access layer on top of it, so that, for example, very democratic and transparent institutions like Wikipedia fail to be sustainable in the future, because all the knowledge that we are providing openly, not only to our European society, but to the whole world, is harvested by other actors which are not following rule-based exploitation paths. And that means, how do we protect ourselves from being robbed?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry for the question.
No.
But it's really annoying me, and I'm a scientist from my whole life, yeah. But this is really creating a lot of doubt at the moment. Are we so stupid? Or are we simply not having the means to protect ourselves? So what, asking you as someone who is active in the field, where do we go from here?
Okay. I will try to provide two different answers. I will provide one answer with two different approaches. The first one is about openness itself. If the results of my research are open, it means that everything that will be built on top of these results will be open as well. This is the foundation of the concept of openness. This is the foundation of open access, this is the foundation of open source, this is the foundation of openness, generally speaking. Then, of course, as you said, in some parts of the world, rules are not applied in the same way they're applied in Europe, for instance, and we can see this risk of, as you said, being robbed. But actually, I don't think that this is a real risk because when it is open, I mean, we will be robbed when people will steal something that we still try to protect as our own property. But when everything is open, it is impossible to steal something that is freely available to everybody. And also the kind of competition that you can build on top of openness will provide probably more advantages to the same world that has produced this openness. I give an example, the practical example, the second part of my answer. In this room, I guess that everybody has something very similar to this in their pockets. And unfortunately, this technology that is a big part of the life of everybody. This technology is still controlled by two companies from the United States, actually, because we have one company that is producing the technology for 80% of these mobile devices, and another company that is producing the remaining 20%. And the same applies to computers, as we've seen, the same applies to LLMs, whatever is modern technology today, the technology that everybody is using today. Where is Europe? Does not exist. And why? Because Europe decided for some, in my opinion, very obscure reasons, not to invest in this field in a completely different way. I mean, the Commission is starting to think since just a couple of years, and not only the Commission, most of the universities, most of the research organizations, most of the governments, why we are investing or spending such a large amount of the taxes of our citizens in the software, in the technology of these big American private companies. Why are we subsidizing Microsoft? Why are we subsidizing Google and Amazon and so on and so forth? I mean, we could do something completely different. We should do something completely different. And if we could do something that is at the same time different but open, this will be a real alternative. And not just the alternative of exploiting a different technology that could be better, that could be worse, doesn't matter, but a completely different model also in terms of business, because an open business model could be not only coherent with our values, as I said, like democracy and participation, but more coherent with the way we do research. And for me, it is extremely, extremely strange the fact that only today the European Commission is starting to invest in this alternative to technology. And what applies to technology, to this very basic technology that everybody uses, could be applied to any kind of technology. And in Europe, we have marvelous examples of the openness of research at every possible level, believe me. I don't think that when something is open, could be stolen by somebody else. On the other hand, I think that when we try to protect something that we are actually not able to protect, because from this point of view, Europe is not really strong compared to other parts of the world, well, this is the real danger, in my opinion. I don't know if this was an answer to your question.
It's not a final answer, but it is a hopeful position.
Thank you.
Which is soothing my worries.
Hi. Well, first of all, thanks for the interesting presentation. I would like to make you a question to get to know your opinion about the allocation of fundings for research. Don't we face a risk that probably popular science or hot topics for research coming from society with the participation of citizens will drain somehow funds for more fundamental research?
This is a good question. Uh, Thank you. Well, honestly, I do not see this risk because anyway, there is some basic research that has anyway a big impact on the practical life of everybody. In the last decades, I mean, my background is in physics, in particle physics. And in the last decades, one of the partners of our work has been CERN in Geneva. And this is one of the most beautiful examples of how basic research, and when I say basic research, I mean it's who cares about the Higgs boson? At the end of the day, I mean, I do not even care personally. But if you look at the impact that this research organization, that this basic research had on our lives, I mean, it's amazing. It's really amazing. Because, and again, this is something that people usually is not aware of. But there is this impact because a lot of the practical applications of basic research on particle physics are something that, I mean, are also a matter of survival for many people, you know. And we shouldn't forget that a lot of inventions, a lot of applications, technical application, what has been developed in this lab, I mean, is really part of our lives today, and we give it for granted. It was not the case just a few decades ago. Even the fact that we live in this super connected world, it is not a coincidence that the basic technology of the connection of people, the connections, not only the connection of computers, the connection of people together, these methods were also born in this same lab for the needs of basic research. And this has had a tremendous impact on the society at large. So, no, I don't think that this could limit the availability of funding for basic research, because basic research doesn't live on a different planet. It is not funded by different kind of people, and basic research is not as useless as most of the people are still thinking. The example that I gave you a few minutes ago, the one about the vaccines, what has saved millions of lives in 2021, 2022, is also an example of basic research, because new methods that were supposed to save lives against some kind of cancers and so on and so forth have afterward been applied to completely different problems, and in that case to a big social problem like the pandemic. And this was obviously basic research. So I don't think that this will be a limit. I think that this could even amplify the amount of financial resources available for basic research. Because when people understand what basic research is about and why it is important, they will be much, much happier to fund it. We have a lot of examples in the history of research, a lot of good examples, but also a lot of bad examples in terms of the importance of trust in research. When people are not trusting research, they will not fund it. And obviously we have this power, because living in a democratic society, I'm talking about Europe, we can obviously put limits to research, but we can also push research. We can decide that who will decide to allocate the funding for research, and to which kind of research. And this is what we do in our democracies. So I don't think that this is a danger. I still think that this is probably the power of the people applied to research, just to give a kind of a slogan to this, to this answer.
Hi. Thank you for your engaging presentation. I also have a question. So, as you were talking, and you addressed it really well, so I changed my question from the beginning. You said about the amateur data. So my question is related to the, safety of this amateur data, because as it can influence more and more policy, it can also be subject of data poisoning and intentional manipulation. Are there like any sort of circuit breakers? Just to give, I'm an architect, so I'm going to talk about built environment. So there is a movement which is called NIMBY, not in my backyard. So basically, in an area that is due for development, if some residents decide to oppose that, they can falsify data that is presented as from amateurs, people that are not scientists, and stop the. Just to give a really silly example, to say there is the presence of an endangered animal spotted in the area, so you halt all the development, for instance. So are there any circuit breakers?
Thank you. Good point. Well, what I can say is the fact that if we all together are producing data, we are also in control of this data. And for instance, we have produced some interesting data before my presentation, because answering to this question actually was a production of data. And this was a collective production of data. But the data were openly available to everybody. And so this is the best possible way to control the data and to provide the opportunity of this control to people that are actually professionals about this kind of data, not only to people that was clicking on the answer and that's it, So this is an example of what transparency actually means. The fact that when we all together are producing data, it is difficult to fake data. Look at what is happening in science. There is a larger and larger and larger amount of data that is not produced by machines, labs, people anymore, that is actually produced by algorithms. The production of artificial data is widely used in research. And I think that this is more and more difficult to control than data that are produced together with the participation of people, And even the same kind of data, if they are produced in a transparent way, are much, much easier to be controlled. And when I say controlled by the people, I mean people that are also researchers. We shouldn't think, one of the big problems is that still a large part of the researchers are thinking we, the researchers, and the rest of the people, But when we say the people, researchers are people. And people should be researchers, working together with professional researchers, also providing data. Then, poisoning data. I don't think that if the processes are transparent and based on participation, are subject to this kind of danger. I see many more dangers in poisoning data, exploiting different kind of technology, especially technology that are completely not transparent, that are completely obscure, like the technologies of large language models that are used today in research, because we are using black boxes that we cannot control, because they are owned and run by private companies. And as a matter of fact, the research in the field of LLMs has moved from universities and public research organizations to private companies. And this is really more and more difficult to control, and therefore the danger of fake data, of poisoning the data is in my opinion, much higher than the data that are produced with the participation of the people in any given field, including artificial intelligence. Because if I knew which data that I produced every day are used and in which way they are used, well, I will be in control of this data. Today, I do not know which data are used and in which way they are used, and therefore I do not have any control on this because I'm not part of the process. I'm just an object. And this makes, in my opinion, a big, big difference.
Can I put, first of all, a very interesting presentation and discussion. And I would like to put another, let's say, idea on the table just to hear your opinion. I participate under ESAC. ESAC is the European Academy Scientific Advisory Council. It's a board that collects members from various EU member academies in order to give advice to European Commission about various issues. And we are talking about what is the motto behind this, to have science for policy and not policy for science. Of course, politicians are also citizens, and also their decisions affect a lot of citizens. So this is a different dimension of basing, let's say, political opinions or political, let's say, actions eventually, based on scientific knowledge that is offered by this ESAC board. And I would like to hear your opinion because it's also it's another dimension of what you are discussing, actually. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. This is extremely, extremely interesting, and in my opinion, very, very important. Historically, the participation of citizens to research was limited to collecting specimens like leaves, insects, to observe some natural phenomena, the quality of air, the quality of water, and so on and so forth. Natural sciences. This is actually where citizen science was born, and this is still today the core of citizen science. But participation is not limited, and definitely shouldn't be limited to these fields of natural sciences, because these should be applied also to this kind of research, this kind of science, for instance, to policies. And this is something that is actually happening in the last framework program in Horizon Europe. The amount of funding in terms of participatory research in fields different from natural sciences has definitely increased. The amount of funding in participation for social sciences has increased because the Commission apparently believes that participation is also important for making policies. I've been coordinating a project that was a project of the European Commission in the last few years. It was a project about the food system in the European research area. And luckily, the Commission decided, instead of mandating some rules out of the blue, to consult with the people before even starting to write these policies. Policies will be written in the next 2-3 years. But this kind of consultation with the people has started 4 years ago. What does it mean? If you want to have evidence-based decisions at the political level, you obviously have to include also the people in the production of this evidence. It's not the evidence that, when you talk about social sciences, it's not the evidence that is produced in the lab. It's the evidence that is produced by the people themselves. And I think that this is a beautiful example of democracy. This is a beautiful example of participation, because you participate to the creation of the information that are used to make decisions. And this is, at the end of the day, what politics, what democratic politics should be about. So, yes, I really think that this is very important, but I've been observing in the last years that this has been increased and pushed by the European Union in most of the different research funding programs at the ERC level, and in many different programs of the Union. So I think that yes, this is extremely important because politics shouldn't be far from research. Research shouldn't be far from politics. And as I said, evidence-based decisions is actually what democracy in science is also about.
I liked your ideas about open data and open research. At the same time, you started your presentations that China is ahead in energy technology and United States are ahead in large language models and those technologies. Have you compared how open data and open research questions are there in China and United States? And maybe we in Europe, we are going in different directions than China and United States, and that's the reason they are successful.
Thank you. Yes and not. Yes and not because, yes, because obviously we all are studying what is happening and trying to understand not only what is happening, but also why it is happening in this way. No, because some of the information are not available, and therefore it is quite difficult to understand not only what is happening, because what is happening is more or less evident, but why and in which way this is happening. China, we actually do not know how they work, because we do not have a clue. Because they are not transparent, definitely. China is one of the less transparent societies that we know. And therefore, it is difficult to understand why they are successful. We can see part. We can answer part of this question. They are very successful because we, the Europeans, are actually considering a good idea to buy this technology in China because it is obviously cheaper. But why is it cheaper? We do not know. As a matter of fact, we do not know. We do not have an answer because this lack of transparency prevents us to understand why they can produce this technology and why we have to buy this technology there and we do not produce the same technology in Europe. On the other hand, the United States of America and the production of artificial intelligence is not very different because the privatization of research in this field also prevents us to understand why they are successful, why they work in this way, and why these results are actually what we perceive that is coherent with our needs. Not having alternatives, and we do not have alternatives in both fields. Because today, of course, in this country, in France, there is a very nice initiative, a very nice system. It's called Mistral. Wow, beautiful idea, beautiful initiatives. Which size is this initiative in the global market of AI in Europe? 0 point something. So let's say that what we are using is something that we do not control, that we do not even understand, because it is produced in a completely obscure way. We do not even have a clue about the amount of money that is invested in this field. In both fields, because we do not have a clue about the amount of money that the Chinese government is investing in the production of what we use for the production of green energy. So working in a completely different way, as I said before, also means to compete in terms of rules. If we want to change the rules, we have to start to use completely different rules, because if we would work in the same way our competitors are working, we will end exactly with the same results, or probably with not results, because I guess that Europe will not be able to put together the same amount of money that both China and the United States of America are putting in these two fields of research. We cannot compete on this. We have to compete on rules, different methods. And what is interesting, in my opinion, is the fact that, for instance, in the field of artificial intelligence, China decided to adopt completely different methods. What is happening in the field of large language models in the United States is just let's make them bigger, larger, you know, more data used to train the models, and larger machines and faster GPUs and whatever, you know. The Chinese government decided probably that this was not possible in China, and therefore they decided to compete on efficiency and not on the, you know, on the size of the investment, on the size of the models, on the size of the machines. So they tried a completely different approach. And this, in my opinion, shows that a different approach is always possible. When you know that you will not be able to compete in the same way with your competitor, you have to invent something completely different. Look, this is exactly what happened with particle physics. Why Europe had this big advantage in particle physics? I mean, first because we have invented a completely different way to work in this field of research. Second, because the United States of America didn't have the trust of the citizens for this basic research. And the people decided not to fund this research anymore because they freely decided not to invest the amount of money that was needed to build the largest accelerator that we have done here in Europe. You know, so working in a different way sometimes is the only way to compete with somebody that otherwise will definitely win. This is my opinion. Obviously, it's only my opinion. It's not based on facts, but I really think that the way we do things is extremely, extremely important.
The motto of EUT Plus is European values empowering technology. So in our mission statement, we are trying to do things a bit differently. However, we are a university of technology, which means that citizen science is not evident for all of us. So I'm a sociologist, Santiago is an anthropologist. We had a citizen lab where we were only from social sciences and humanities. So how do we, when we are talking about citizen science, stakeholder engagement, we are facing colleagues who are very interested, very eager to learn, but who say, well, I'm an engineer, so how do we do that? So what would you recommend in terms of democratizing citizen science among our colleagues from a university of technology where people are mainly from physics, from engineering, and how do we do, because we're really interested and it is in our mission statement and our core values. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is really, really crucial. Honestly speaking, I do not have a general answer. I mean, the general answer already, I already gave the general answer during my presentation. Opening science, opening research, letting the people be part of what we do. It doesn't mean that everybody will be an engineer, but that everybody could work together with engineers, that everybody could understand what engineers are doing in technology universities. I have some practical examples. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to work together with the Technical University in Munich, Germany, on a project that was based on participation. It was a project about energy, and it was made together with a civil society organization, a group of citizens, a group of women, actually. It was a women organization, and experimenting different ways to not only produce, but also to use energy through solar panels, you know, to try to understand all the practical problems together. because the problems are not the same when you study this in your lab. And this is exactly what happened in Munich, you know, because first you run all the simulations, then you start with the prototypes, and then you start to experiment. But then when you put them into the houses of the people, everything works in a different way, you know. And therefore, starting this research project together with quite a large number of people, actually, quite a large number of users of power, you know, in their own homes, you know, in their buildings, in their kitchens, in their, doesn't matter, you know. This was really important because this gave the engineers the opportunity to better understand some of the problems that would have arisen after the experiments, after, you know, the application of this technology. Sometimes technology is produced without this kind of real life participation. And sometimes this technology fails because, you know, it has been developed in a lab and it was very successful in the lab, but then you move it to the real world and it doesn't work anymore. And come on, we all have a lot of examples of these failures in many different industries, for instance, including energy, by the way, in some very specific applications of the production and the conservation of energy, like electric cars, for instance. And what does it mean? That if you work together with the people that are actually supposed to be not only the funders of your research, but the people that will use the technology, probably you will have better results and your technology will not be only accepted, you know, accepting technology. I've seen a lot of different proposals that still have the phase of acceptance. I will do this and then there will be a phase of acceptance because people will have to accept the results of my research. Come on, I mean, why should I accept something that has been invented by somebody else? Why don't we do all this together since the very beginning? And therefore, starting research projects together with the people will probably give us more and more success because we will definitely fulfill the real needs of the people that at the end of the day are also our own needs as engineers, as researchers, and so on. I hope that is the answer to your question.
Thank you.
Excellent. So talking about energy, it's time for lunch. We need to preserve the energy so we keep having these conversations. Enrico, thank you very much. Please, an applause for Enrico.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to close as a final reflection on EUT Plus is a very specific ecosystem within an ecosystem, which is Europe. We can be pilots of these ideas. And that's part of what we're here. We're trying to experiment on these things. And now this week, working package of research, I think we're going to focus on what is the impact that we want to provide to society in a different way. So hopefully taking some knowledge from citizen science, engaged research, participatory research, all these things that we have to do, that we promised that we were going to do. So take that as we are a pilot. So let's go for it. No, lunch. So it's same room as the coffee room. So upstairs over here, and then we'll break out different rooms. Look at your schedule. If you're lost,